make a new document that we can just play around on. Regular size. Looking at layer effects and things that you can do to the different layer effects. Let's add a simple circle to what we're working with. Working in shape mode. Remember, when you make shape mode, you're going to have a new layer that you're going to apply this to. And let's turn it red so we can see what we're working with. The layer effects allow you to add some commonly used effects to whatever layer that you're working on. You can find this in a couple of different places. The little FX button at the very bottom, when you click on it, will list out all the different effects that you want to use. And of course, when you select the name, it'll pop up and show the options for that particular effect. Pay attention to which one is checked off on the side and also that the name is highlighted. You can see now I've added the drop shadow, and the little dark drop shadow is behind my option. However, if I was to just check off, let's say I wanted to add an inner glow, I can add it, clicking the check. It's really, really small, but my options didn't change. I'm still on my drop shadow, and I can change my drop shadow options. You need to click on the name of inner glow. Now you can see the options also change, and I can make that a little bit larger, add on, play around with this. Layer effects are one of those things that you kind of have to play around with. As a designer, I try not to use them too much. I only use them whenever they're necessary. I can tell really bad amateur designers that try to throw a bunch of effects onto a design thinking it'll look really good. Oftentimes it just doesn't turn out that way. Of course, if I want to take them away, I can uncheck it. Let's add a couple of things different here. Let's do, we'll add a little outline stroke to it. Make it pretty big. We'll do it to the inside of it. There, now we can see what we're working with. Beautiful. Let's say OK to this. Notice whenever you add a layer effect, on your layer you're going to get a little FX symbol, and it's going to list out all the different effects that you have. If I wanted to turn on and off the visibility of those, I can easily click on the eyeball and see what that looks like from there. I can also collapse the little effects and see those from that. Here's a good tip. If you double click the empty space on your layers, this will also open up your layer styles or your layer effects palette and let you choose from whatever you're working with from here as well. We'll undo that and say OK. So there's a couple of different things that you can do for adding your effects and working with your effects on here. Let's talk about, let's keep that on there actually. Doing some, let's do filters. The book is going to give you a couple of different images, and they're smaller, lower quality kind of images that you can add filters to when working with Photoshop. Let's do the middle one. Filters are a lot of fun because they're a way of adding some artistic kind of styling and artistic kind of rendering to a photograph without having to put in a lot of effort to make it look like it's an artistic drawing. You can find all of your filters. You've got a drop-down menu. And the ones I like to use, and the one the book is going to use, is found under Filter Gallery. When you open this up, it's going to give you a separate little icon or a working window that you can work from. All of the filters are found over here, and you can click on the little preview of it, and it'll show you kind of what it looks like. In this case, I can make it look like a sketch, and so if I wanted to look like a charcoal sketch or a chalk or a graphic pen kind of style, I can do this. Notice on my preview that I have, the colors that I'm working with are kind of this dark gray and white. The reason why it's these colors is because check out my foreground and background color in my palette. Those are the two colors I'm working with from here. Now if I hit cancel, I'll go back. Let's change this up. Let's say I did a bright red and maybe a dark blue or something like that. Say OK. Now if I go back to my filters and I apply it, you can see the colors will change up for those. So the first thing to notice is how that is. The second thing is pay attention to your options on the right hand side. You can change up the intensity of some of these. And each one's going to be slightly different, so you need to understand what that does. And there's also some other that you can choose from if you hit your drop down menu. You can make it look like a cutout, or like it's painted as a fresco or as a sponge kind of painting. What I do professionally is, as with the layer effects, I try not to do a lot of filters on my photographs. I can tell when somebody does it, and it's just kind of an amateur, quick way of getting people's attention. Adding a filter doesn't make your design look better. Good design makes your design look better. But if somebody ever sent me like a really low quality image, like it's really small or it's something they took on their cell phone, and it's all pixelated or blurry, and they absolutely have to have it in their design, usually what I'll do is I'll apply a Photoshop filter to that photo. It's just a way of kind of cleaning it up and adding interest to it without having to work with or having to keep a really bad looking image into my design. Does that make sense? So that's kind of the way I use them. I use them very sparingly. And when we say OK, it'll apply it to the layer that we had selected this way. One thing to know about working with filters, however, is we want to be able to work non-destructively. Non-destructive means I'm not going to be getting rid of the pixels that I'm working with. Notice that when I applied the filter, it changed my background. I've no longer have those original pixels that I can go back to and make an edit to or to change. Here's what I would do professionally. I'm going to undo what I just did. Change your layer that you're working with to a smart object. In my case, I've got my background. You can select it, convert to smart object. Smart objects, when you see that little icon, saves that layer as a copy, and you're only working on that copy. Check out what happens when I apply a filter now. We'll go to Filter Gallery. We'll keep this one. By the way, you can add on multiple things, like here's colored pencil. If I click down here, we can maybe make a sponge colored pencil. So you can add several things to here. When I say OK, check out what I have for here. I've got a smart filter. The smart filter, just like with the layer styles, keeps track of the filters that you have. And if I ever wanted to go back and make changes to this filter, if I didn't like it, I can double click on here. It'll open up the options and it will allow me to change them up or to get rid of them. Let's say I like that. I can say OK, and it'll update the original that I have. I haven't lost anything that I can't undo. So one kind of professional practice, work with smart objects whenever you need to add a filter to your area. All cool? Okay, let's keep moving forward with this. The final thing that you're going to work with in this particular project is adding a clipping mask. Clipping masks work a lot like we've done with the layer mask and the vector mask. It's another way of getting rid of unwanted pixels and areas. However, with a clipping mask, these are what are called layer dependent. With a layer mask and a vector mask, you get a little icon that's associated with your layer. Clipping masks look like these. You've got two different sets of layers. In this case, I've got an image on one layer and it's pointing down to this one below. And what that is the object that we're wanting to clip it into. We're wanting to stick that inside of it. The advantage to using this is that because it's on its own layer, I can actually move around that picture and place it exactly where I want it to go. It's almost like it's inside of its own little frame. I can also scale it up. Hello. Scale it up or scale it down. And I can do the same thing to my object that I have. And they're both independent of one another. To make a clipping mask, let's go back to my little object here. You do have to have, of course, multiple different layers. So I've got, say, a circle. Let's say I wanted to put a picture inside of here. Let's do one of me and my sweet little girl. So I've got her. Notice that she's on top of the other layer. I like to throw her in as whenever possible. It's like adding puppies or something to it. But she's on her own layer, and the layer is above the shape or the layer that I want to clip something to. With it selected, I can go up to Layer and do Create Clipping Mask. And this will enable the clipping. Notice now I've got my little icon and it clips to here, and I can move it around and reposition it however I want it to be. If I wanted to add a layer effect to this, I can only add a layer effects to my bottommost mask. If I tried to, let's say I selected my picture and I wanted to do a drop shadow. We'll say OK. Well, the drop shadow has been added, but it's still clipped inside of here. I can't see what it looks like. But if I added a drop shadow to my ellipse, that way it'll now show up and it'll actually stay clipped inside of this area as well. And I can move my ellipse around, which is really cool. If I do need to move both of them at the same time, I need to select both of the layers or all of the layers. Another advantage of working with a clipping mask is you can actually clip multiple pictures to the same mask. So if I wanted to throw in some of these other pictures, we'll do that one and we'll do this one. They're on their own layers. I can select it, add the clipping mask, and now that picture will be masked inside of that one as well. So this comes in handy if you're trying to do multiple montages. Turn on auto select again. Oh, come on. There we go. So if I wanted this one to stay inside the circle, here's another keyboard shortcut that's really great to know. If you hold down the Option key and click in between two layers, notice how my cursor changes to the little icon. It'll automatically add the clipping mask. So now I've got multiple little masks inside of the circle that I'm working with. If I needed to unmask it, it's simply a matter of going back up to layer and releasing it from the clipping mask. Or I can hold down Option, click again, and it'll unmask it with that one. So for this particular project, you're masking and placing the little images inside of here. The one thing that trips a lot of people up is pay attention to your stacking order that you have. If I've got a if I've got a little square that's on the left-hand side, I need to have my picture also placed on the left-hand side. I think even in the book, sometimes it'll ask you to position it and it'll be over here on the right. Let's get rid of the other one so you can see well. If it's over here on the right-hand side and you're trying to clip it to this one, it's not going to show up. The reason why is because it's being clipped to an area that's not inside of my mask. So paying attention to where they're at in the stacking order. You can move these around if necessary, just by clicking and dragging, placing it wherever it needs to go. All cool? Okay, I'm going to turn your computers back over to y'all. The rest of this time is to be able to work on this. Again, this will be the last day that I work on the montage one. Next project that we're going to do will go pretty quickly. All we're doing is